Hi, I'm going to be looking at some of the solutions that I've been asked to show, as well as some solutions from the last self-assessment that we did last week. Here's a question from Knowledgehook that was requested of me to help with the answer, and so I'll kind of go through this. Hopefully this looks familiar to you. And also I'm going to, afterwards, I'm going to be looking at the most the three questions from the self-assessment that I collected the marks for last week that were the most popular incorrect results. Okay, so I'll look at those in a second. So we want to see what value this expression is, and when p equals -0.5 and q equals 0.3. So I'm not a big fan personally of having decimals and fractions in these things, but this is a question from Knowledgehook, and so they did that. So the answer ends up being a decimal. So I'll show that to you. So so we started off with -4, and then p is -0.5. So we're going to substitute in -0.5 in for p, and you have to remember to put that in brackets because it's negative, and the entire value of p is -1/2, and then that's squared, and then we've got plus 16. And then we've got p and q being substituted in again. So p is -0.5, as we know. Q is 0.3. And then plus q cubed. And I'll put that in here. Okay. So now we have to follow GEDMAS and do all the order of operations. So here I'm just going to calculate that -1/2 squared. Well, -1/2 squared we know is -1/2 multiplied by a -1/2. So the result is a quarter, and a negative multiplied by a negative is positive. So that -1/2 squared becomes 1/4. And then so that -1/2 here, because we have a decimal of 0.3, I'm going to change that to -0.5. So in my mind, I'm going to say this is -0.5 right here. And so I've got 16. I'll do this in a couple steps. 16 multiplied by 0.5 multiplied by -0.5 multiplied by 0.3. So -0.5 multiplied by 0.3 is -0.15. And then 0.3 cubed is 0.027. Okay, and then we just continue on here. -4 multiplied by a quarter is just -1. And then we got 16 multiplied by 0.15. So 16 multiplied by -0.15 gives us -2.4. And so it'd be plus -2.4, but a positive multiplied by a negative just gives you a negative, so that ends up being like a subtraction sign. So -1 minus 2.4 plus 0.027. And then when we work that out, we get -1 plus 0.027. That gives us -3.373. Okay, so that would be the answer to that question. Now we move on to questions from the self-assessment. Or I guess this would be the powers exponent laws quiz that I gave you. So which algebraic expression represents the object below? Well, we've got a square, and we've got 2D. 2D, so the dimensions of this are 2D by 2D. And so if we're looking at the object basically is representing the area of that, and we know the area of a square is side squared. And side squared here, we've got 2D squared, which means it's 2 squared d squared, which is 4d squared. Okay, And that would, of course, be answer D. Moving along to question 2 from the same quiz. Which model represents the algebraic expression 4n squared? Well, 4n squared is 4n all squared. Okay, well, this part A, that's just a line. Okay, so that's just one length. So the length of that is 4n. Over here, we're looking at area again. Area is s squared. I don't know why I put brackets because I don't need them, which is 2n squared all squared, which then gives you 4n to the power 4 because we're multiplying 2 times 2 here, and there's a 1 in this exponent, and then it's 2 times 1. So it'd be 2 squared, which is 4, and then n to the power 2 times 2, which is 4. So that's for that one. And then here, this is the volume, which is s cubed. And so that would be 4n cubed, which is not what's given as the option up here. And so the only thing that does work here is the area for part B. Area is side squared. And we know the side length is 4n. And so the area is 4n squared, just like we see here. Okay, so for question number 2, the answer was B. And then moving along to question 10, we want to simplify this. So -5 squared n cubed all squared. Now it's kind of, sorry, that's squared, not n. That's squared here. Now, here's the little tricky part. That -5, that negative is not part of the squared in that, that first in the coefficient. So basically, this is -1 multiplied by 5 squared, multiplied by n cubed, all squared. And maybe I'll put those round brackets around in red just to show that. Okay. And so then we know that if there's no exponent, the exponent is 1. And so here, when we do a power of a power, we multiply the powers together. So 2 multiplies by 3, 2 multiplies by 2, and 2 multiplies by that 1. So we get -1 squared, -1 in brackets, 5 to the power 4, n to the power 6. And then -1 squared is this +1. And if it's +1 multiplied by this, we don't really need even to use it, that negative squared at all. So that's 5 to the power 4, n to the power 6. And 5 to the power 4 is 5 squared times 5 squared, which is 25 times 25, n squared, or sorry, n to the power 6, which then gives you, actually I'll do this down here, which gives you 625 n to the power 6. Okay, and so that means that the answer here is D. Okay, so those are the solutions to 3 of the questions from the assessment, the online assessment, and 1 question from Knowledgehook. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.